Welcome to episode 1 of the podcast where we get into what's really good in the world. For those who may not know, I'm Nathan Allebach, and I am the social media manager for Allebach Communications, where I most notably run the Steakum Meats account. So basically, I'm one of those brands trying to be cool online. I'm also a songwriter, promoter, and now your weird host, because I looked around and said, you know what the world really needs? Another podcast. So let's just jump right into this. If you've paid any attention to companies on social media the past year, chances are you've seen MoonPie, which is an iconic Southern family-owned company that sells essentially these marshmallow graham cracker disc treats. As someone who works in social myself, I've had a bit of a fun online relationship between MoonPie and my Steakum account. To me, they've just been the best emerging brand on Twitter, and they have the numbers to show it. Their account initially went viral last August when MoonPie tweeted LOL OK in response to a rival snack company of theirs, Hostess, which had claimed to be the official snack of the eclipse. That tweet alone garnered over 1.1 billion impressions. And the 0.1 in there is super important to mention because that in and of itself is 100 million. Just to reiterate the scale. So yeah, I was lucky enough for the chance to sit down with the man, the myth, the legend behind MoonPie himself, Patrick Wells. Patrick has created some of the most viral branded social media work on the internet and has been featured in USA Today, Time, Forbes, BuzzFeed, you name it. He spent the past few years working as part of the social team at the Tombras Group in Knoxville and has recently moved to New York City as a copywriter for the ad agency Laundry Service. In this talk, we got into the story of MoonPie, the future of social media marketing, and just some fun banter through our experiences in this space. It was really cool to talk with Patrick face-to-face without our brand masks on, and I hope you enjoyed as well. So with all that said, get ready to hear what's really good. And we're live. Patrick, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So for those who may not know, just if you want to give like a brief overview of who you are, what you do, what's going on.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Wells, and I'm here hanging with Nathan. And we've I kind of started the MoonPie Twitter account. I mean, it was there before I got there, but when I took it over, it was 5,000, and when I went through, I think it now has more than it was like a quarter million.
Yeah, let's let that sink in for people who don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot. So yeah, I worked for MoonPie's advertising agency for like 3.5 years and had MoonPie for about a year and a half. And really, if that's my claim to fame in the advertising business. Some people have canned lines and pencils, and I have a BuzzFeed article about
posting tweets.
But posting tweets, and on some numerous like sassy Twitter lists.
That's sort of what the people want, I guess. That's what gets the most brand exposure is these clapbacks and the sort of sassiness that you see from Wendy's and MoonPie.
Oh yeah, it was a huge trend. I mean, it really kicked off that last year, like the beginning of 2017 with all of Wendy's stuff. I mean, I'm sure people were doing it, previously, and
just nothing to that extent. Because you see now. I mean, it's really weird for me. I mean, even doing the Steakum stuff and watching what you're doing, watching what Wendy's is doing. It's weird to see all these newer emerging brands, like even from corporate level to the small town type businesses trying on this voice. Like you see brands basically tweeting MoonPie tweets as whatever brand they are, Yeah,
and that's so weird because I think a lot of the voice stuff is like credibility. Like if you see some random like bank or even like the government sector, like you'll see like Department of Defense like tweet like weird memes and like you're supposed to be like defending the country.
What are you doing? These are our tax dollars.
Yeah, and I think it's about like credibility. I mean, anybody can like I don't believe it's not necessarily a thing, but like, does it make sense coming from you?
Yeah, it definitely like MoonPie. It's similar to steak. Like there's certain brands that it's in the name, it's in what it is. Like it's a marshmallow graham cracker
Right.
treat, so it's like already kind of funny. It's not like you're selling some like upscale like health fitness type bar. You know what I mean? Like it kind of fits the voice
Yeah, it's like
of what it
it's
is.
the persona. It's and I think too, I think it credits to a lot of success is just having that name. And I think people, even if you have never tried one or know what it actually looks like, you've heard that word. You've heard those two words put together at some
Yeah,
point
it's
in your
pop
life.
culture too.
Yeah, and it's like that's how they grew. Like they've they didn't spend money on advertising for the first 80 years of their existence, and then they didn't really compete. They were same size as Little Debbie for a long time, and then they didn't really put any money behind it, and it became like this cult brand of the South. And
Yeah.
but it obviously they're nationally distributed, so people have like seen it, they've heard of it, they know there's a moon associated with it, and then all they needed to do was just yeah, they just needed to be like they needed to see it and be like, oh, that's a thing. Yeah, I know what that, like, I don't know what it is, but like it's saying something. So,
yeah. So like when people see like the tweets that you've been putting out, and this was when it all started. Was it exclusively on Twitter, or was it across platforms? Like, did you have a team developing content alongside the Twitter strategy, or
we did. So there was a whole like creative team, but like I was kind of the one doing it like day in and day out. So like most brands, that if you see people working with those, there's some sort of content calendar where you're writing out posts in advance, like month and a half out, saying like, here's what we're going to post on Mother's Day, here's what we're going to post on
the first day of summer, all the holidays,
like Friday the 13th, what are these basic things. And so that was kind of the situation. So we all had like producers and photographers and people who would boost posts, but it was really only on like Facebook and stuff. Like Twitter wasn't really the primary platform, just because it was so small at the time. And so we kind of focused.
It's an underutilized platform for brands.
100%. And at that time, like Twitter's identity was kind of up in the air. They're like, what is this? Like it's losing stock. It's like, brands are leaving, they're not advertising on it anymore. And I think they kind of opened a couple different platforms, like looking back. But
especially when you've watched the organic reach on Facebook drop, and same with Instagram, where they've been trying these new algorithms out with people's news feeds and kind of tampering with what people see. Like Twitter, it still has its algorithms, but it's always been more of a stream of consciousness. So it's like you get what you follow and the order generally that you're getting it. So it's more. Yeah,
and it's a good thing and a bad thing for Twitter, because I mean it was a good thing in the sense of like, okay, if you're on Twitter, like everyone knows the deal, but it was a bad thing because even at their peak of performance, like they didn't change their product offering for like 6 or 7 years. Or like
they were never profitable.
No,
it's so just crazy to think that Twitter wasn't profitable.
Yeah, so like we were like focused on Twitter, and it looking back, it kind of was a perfect storm going into it that made a lot of sense, especially when things were going viral at a more higher rate than they were in the past.
This was like the steam from what Wendy's have been doing with their Twitter. Like it was getting picked up in the media. People were paying attention more to what brands were doing.
And just easy to like spread things really quickly. Like if an Instagram post took off, like you wouldn't really know about it. Unless you like went through and looked at all my like random like like you might like this kind of stuff that I don't look at. But I'll see if a friend or a respected colleague like retweets something. But same for Facebook too. I think that was initially what we focused on, was just trying to recruit younger people into our Facebook audience by use of dollars and content and videos and while it worked too. I mean, they definitely like got a larger reach. Like people were seeing it at a much higher rate, but still it's kind of the similar audience of like, I think our targeting was just like friends and fans of the account, and then people who like other snack brands that were more likely to choose it as a I don't know what's the word for it, where you just kind of it's an impulse buy. Essentially.
Totally,
you don't for MoonPie simply is just you don't plan it on your grocery list. You see it in the store, you pick it up, you're like, I'm going to take this home just because it feels right at the moment.
Right. I think the huge thing, too, like the difference between like Facebook reach versus something like Twitter reach, because with Facebook, you're doing the paid reach, the paid advertising, and you're putting more like highly produced content out to get these engagements. You find a lot of brands have more of a, like, quote unquote, their numbers are bigger on Facebook. Like they may have more likes on it, but the reach is so much lower, and there's not as much like repeat memory. So you can't, like, whereas with Twitter, you can have back and forth with somebody and have an actual meaningful interaction, where to
Right.
them, they want to show that to their friends and they remember it more. So, like, they have a memory now attached to that brand versus on Facebook, it's almost like you're just putting an ad in front of them. Like, more, it's more traditional, like, in the sense where it's just like kind of post, hope people see it and engage with it. Like, there's not much stream of like repeat memory with it.
Yeah, it's definitely like difference between like writing like a letter to a brand that none of your fans will see, and then just like standing up on a soapbox and yelling at that brand,
Yes.
and then all my friends see it, and the brand also hears and sees it.
I
So
always use the soapbox reference. It's so funny. It's exactly what it is. You're standing on your soapbox
like,
trying
there's
to
a
get
chance
attention.
for anyone to see it. Like
Yeah.
Facebook, there's not. Like Twitter, there absolutely is.
Yeah. So like just getting into the brand voice, because like I know, like I was kind of saying before, how a lot of people now are looking at the success of the MoonPie Twitter and trying to emulate that style of humor
Right.
and that voice. Like going into the development process within the agency, I know there's always moving pieces, with teams like trying to like how do we develop the quote unquote brand voice for any given brand? Like how much of that, how much of what we see and what was initially seeded in there was the kind of process that you all did together, and then versus how much of it was you personally? Because I even noticed from tweeting at you and like even getting into the car with you to come here now, it's funny seeing you see the humor. Like it is you, like it's your humor. You know what I mean? It's not like you're tweeting a character necessarily. Like it is a character, but
Right.
it's also something innately like that comes natural to you.
Oh, 100%. It started out very how any advertising like pitch goes, where it's very like buttoned up, it's strategic, it all ladders up to larger like platform pillars. Because I think when we first went down to Chattanooga with we had 3 or 4 people on our team, and we had this huge keynote, and we're like, hey, like here's what the MoonPie brand represents. It represents Southern values. It represents like history and culture and
It's
all
a family
these,
company.
It's his family. It's family friendly.
Yeah.
And then there's like this very last pillar that we presented, and it was called "Out of This World," which was kind of like
The moon.
It was the moon.
It's out of this world.
It was like a quote unquote just tagline that was it was kind of associated with the brand. Like it may be on packaging. I don't remember if it is, but it was there for a while, and it was just kind of our excuse to be like, this is our kind of like our crazy outlet. Like we can we're gonna pitch this, and we're just like, this is gonna kind of give this permission to do kind of whatever. You can associate it with space, because that was kind of what we started off with first. There's like this astronaut, and he like was on the moon and the MoonPie, and just very lowbrow stuff. And then so they pitched it. They loved it, because they're very like family oriented. Like it's been a family company since it started.
Yeah.
The Campbell family still owns it, and so they were really they bought into that really, really well, and that's kind of how messaging kind of started. But then as we kind of like got in the weeds of it, like it was a very primarily social account. They don't do traditional advertising, so traditional creative directors weren't really necessarily involved. They helped from production and ideation standpoint, but really day in and day out, it just became me. And as the content calendars evolved and we started writing those and seeing what was effective and what was effective, the voice just kind of became something that I wanted it to be, and because it kind of had that permission. And obviously there's a lot of like influences that I'm a huge fan of, just from either weird Twitter or brands that I thought were doing it really well, that was unique, not just like your typical Twitter joke that's like a
what's
format.
standing out? What's like be creative? Like
Absolutely.
what we do. Yeah.
Everyone can see like even like a text meme, like like one of those things where you like nowadays it's like what's $5 to buy your perfect man, like those kind of trends like obviously like take off, and you can do your own interpretation of it that's like credible to your brand. But like what are some just out of this world things that you can do and kind of push the envelope a little bit? And we did that, for a year and a half, and it just like you didn't have like anything else with it. I mean, you had like 5,000 fans, and they were still really old fans of the brand. Like, if you had a MoonPie and you thought of him on Twitter, you're going to go and like maybe like them, but it was just like, it was a very weird audience that was on Twitter, and it wasn't there yet.
Yeah, and like it seems like I feel like such an important element with developing out a voice nowadays on social really does come from the tweets and replies section. Like I feel like talking about content calendars, depending on the client, that's pretty standard in the advertising world where, you're planning a month out.
Right.
You get the copy approved. You're trying to, whatever copy you're using and punctuation you're using, you're obviously like working within the quote unquote brand voice, but the brand voice really, I feel at least, develops into its own like a persona, like an actual like you do those what do you call them, you create like a brand persona, you know what I mean, like the ideal, like
Stephanie,
yes,
or
like Stephanie or Bob or whatever, and like
Braden.
Exactly, Braden, that's perfect. And then he has like all these characteristics of like, oh, he's like this, he shops here, whatever. But like with the Twitter replying method, like I feel like you can really weed that out and just develop like an actual person behind, which is what you did. Like, do you see, like in how you did that? I mean, do you see like the inherent value of that? Like for like say like for anyone listening, obviously the MoonPie is the exception, not the rule. Like not every brand is gonna go viral because of their voice, but it lays out a blueprint for how to increase your probability to get to that point and how to develop a more, I guess, a bigger, better audience. So, like, do you agree with that? Like,
yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. And I think if you go back and look at our tweets, if you scroll back far enough, there's a lot of them now. But like to right before like the eclipse tweet happened back in like September of like 2017. There's a difference. Like it's definitely there, and it was because of like that spotlight. But like you said, like not all those brands can pull that off, and I think it's what's credible and what can you allow yourself to talk about.
Yeah, were there any specific? I mean, it's hard to frame this, but like given like the niche that you sort of found yourself in with this specific brand, were there any tips, strategies, like something that worked, something that didn't work, like that can be generally applied for brand? Like you're talking about different brands. Obviously, you have to do what works. If you're a bank, it's going to be different if you're like a snack bar or whatever. So there's not necessarily like you can't just tell someone do memes. You can't, you know what I mean? But are there any kind of general rules or tips of engagement that you have like from the experience of this account?
Yeah, there's a lot now. It's different. Like I kind of look at the view of like if I was MoonPie now telling like a MoonPie that was like there like a few months ago or like this is what you should do. Because obviously it's different when you have like just a huge spotlight and you can just kind of run with it. Like who are building their brands like kind of the old fashioned way, or it's just like starting from scratch. It's tough. But I think it's really about finding like whatever voice that you really want and knowing that like what people have and like the kind of perception that they have like outside of, so doing like listening and like how are they talking about how are they talking about banks or whatever like brand it is like in general, totally. And then like seeing like some of those examples and then really kind of seeing like, okay, what's like the upper crust of like that brand thing, like what is the Wendy's or whatever like of your particular thing, and like how can I push that just a little bit further to where it still makes sense, but is slightly different. And again, like sassy or feisty is not always the way to go. Because there's everyone's on Twitter now looking for the same thing.
That's true. Now that's becoming the sort of norm. Like you expect brands to kind of have comebacks and roasting and all that.
I think it's knowing what you're allowed to talk to as a brand. I think credibility is what I kind of lean on nowadays, especially because like I hate the word ownable because it doesn't mean anything to me. Like we get that a lot. Sometimes
it's advertising lingo. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like is just do it ownable? Like Reebok or Adidas could have said that back in the day, but they just didn't. Like some brands can just like if you say it first, like it's ownable. But
you
like,
own LOL. Okay, now.
Yeah.
Any brand does that now. That's you.
100%. I think there's just being credible and being like, does this make sense coming from a brand? Because I think that's how kind of Twitter takes off. Because even if you look at the LOK tweet, like it makes sense. Like totally. It is a like a visual one-liner of the joke. It's just like someone else claiming superiority of the moon, and then MoonPie is like,
it's so perfect.
Yeah, LOK. Like you just look at it and be like, I get it.
Yep.
And
you don't have to think about it. It's just instant.
And I think that you overthink the process sometimes, especially when it comes to tweets. It's just like, what would just be like a simple one-liner that makes so much sense that people are just like, yep, I get it. Like that's I like this, especially like one of my biggest things that I've seen recently. I mean, a little bit long ago, but it's just like Chili's like finally embracing that "Hi, welcome to Chili's" Vine.
Right.
And I just like I love that because
when they own it,
it's so lowbrow, and it's just like that's perfect for like Twitter. They're just like, especially when you see like all these meme accounts that like retweet like those big like what goes viral. I think kale salad's like a good example of it to kind of see, but like it's all just like a one-liner that makes total sense with like the visual or the tweet. It's just like it's Twitter's. You just don't have to think about it. You don't like. I don't think you don't have to make yourself think or like engage with yourself.
And I think a lot of that, like, too, kind of ties into just brands staying self-aware. Like, there's that's so underlooked. You know what I mean? Like, I feel just being able to make fun of yourself constantly, never taking yourself too seriously, and even your biggest, like, trying to learn how to take your biggest insult area or weakness or place where you're getting trolled and turning that around in a way that's beneficial to you. You see that a lot. I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, there's like even with Steakum, like Steakum, that's an easy one. But there's always these online jokes where people say, "Is it steak?" ? Like that's like an ongoing joke. You know what I mean? It's like just a play on words. So when you see those comments, like I feel like if you're really close to the brand, it's easy to have a gut visceral reaction to get defensive or to ignore it or to report it or you know what I mean? Like like they're talking down on our product. Like, but with internet culture, you have to have such an awareness and ability to roll with the punches, I think, as a brand. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. I think when you think of like self-aware, I think some people think it's like, oh, you're instantly meta. Like you're calling yourself you're calling yourself like you're referring to like a boss. Like it like sometimes it goes over the top. It gets like a little bit cringy. But I think self-awareness kind of applies to just like in general. Like even like, as a person, like having an emotional intelligence as a brand, understanding like that not everything's perfect. Like if you're a fast food like QSR restaurant, like understand that you are like a quick service restaurant. Like you're not some like fancy place.
You're
like,
not a 5-star restaurant.
Yeah, understand that. Let's like
own it.
You're gonna get these tweets all the time saying like, "Hey, my burger sucks" or "This pizza's bad." Like it just happens. Like it's just like there's a bunch of you hire 16-year-olds to work at your restaurant, and it's just that stuff's gonna happen, and you have to be able to like not own it, but in a way that makes your brand looks good. But having this emotional intelligence of what's going on. But yeah,
that's super true. I think about that all the time with that brand Soylent. The drink brand. It's like I think it's a Canadian. Like vegan. It's supposed to be like a meal replacer.
Like, it's like this futuristic like food thing.
Well, it was. I forget the book, but it was written about. I guess like that. It was called Soylent in some kind of novel. I think where it was actually made of people. So now, anytime if you look if you look at any social media posting from Soylent, like if you ever look at their ads or like anything from Facebook, Twitter, you'll always see a comment, at least one, of someone being like, "I won't drink this. It's made of people." Like it's on everything. So like to me, like that's again like if you're deep in that brand and you're seeing that's got to be a pretty bad feeling to like obviously it's being consistently associated with this like reference that has a negative connotation to it, but it's also an opportunity to figure out how you can turn that around and own it to the point where it's like, okay, obviously when people make this joke, it's not about our product, so like let's be the one to arbiter that. Like let's actually differentiate, like play into the joke a little bit so people actually, you know what I mean? Where it's like there's a lot of reluctance to do that across the board when people find like something gone wrong. You know what I mean? Like it's
100%.
The reaction is generally to shut down or issue some kind of apology, or it's generally not to have like a Wendy's MoonPie style clapback.
Yeah. I think it's knowing those situations and being able just to be on top of it really quickly. I kind of equate it to like Reddit culture, where I personally like get on Reddit and like whatever piece of content, I go straight to like the comment feed because usually
Yeah.
like
It's
the
the
top
best. It's so much
comment
better.
is like the best thing.
It's always better than the post.
And I think that's like what's becoming with like this internet. Like that's why everyone comments to begin with. Like even if it's just not a scenario where they feel like they should, like it's going on these random things and like leaving comments just for the heck of it. And I think it's a personal brand building to begin with, but I think you can own it if you're like looking for those kind of people who are like looking for that kind of like those like
attention.
wins, attention.
Yeah, that's what it is. Like,
yeah, and then like put it back on them. Obviously, there needs to be like some sort of plan. Like you can't just say like, oh, our ice cream machine's always like like subtle things like that, like subtle bad things. Like there needs to be like if you're gonna do something like that's damaging to your brand such as that, you should probably like have a larger plan in place or something that's like rewarding.
It can't just be some like off the cuff all the time.
Yeah,
thing. Especially scale it up and scale it down. Obviously, it's totally relative, but yeah, like that's a super interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, it's all self-awareness in there. So like when it comes to like the brand MoonPie itself, I mean you've been the, I guess, pioneer. It's like since you coined the LOL OK tweet, which got over 1 billion impressions and like onward then. So in developing that sort of character and persona, how much has it gotten weird at any point in taking that on as like your identity? Like have those two things kind of entwined? Because now you're sort of known, like people know you as the MoonPie guy. And not just that, but like even from a personal, like internal level, where it's like these tweets, a lot of them are stream of consciousness jokes and things that you thought of personally that's coming out as this brand. Like, has that ever gotten weird, or is it like impacted your life in any like notable way, or are you kind of just used to separating the two?
I think I'm more famous than like my mom's friend circle community than anything. I think it's like a neighbor thing of just like you on Facebook and it's like this. I know this kid. Like it's like my mom's friend Tammy and she's just like going back and forth. I think it's that's where it's like most of the fame. It's not one of those things where it's just they're seeking out like who is this like one being who's doing this, because they know it's like there's a whole company culture behind it.
Totally.
Yeah, no, I think it's I like recognition, but ultimately it's like it's part of something that I want to do going forward, like being like in a full creative spectrum, not just social media in general. I think it's powerful and I love it and I'll always be there, but I think there's it's I don't know, too long didn't read. I'd say like I enjoy it.
Yeah, like you enjoy it for what it is. Like it's like you're saying, it's the role like that you started out with at Tombras, like working in social, and like it's cool. Like it has such high. You've seen it obviously with your own success, like the value of the community management, which I think more and more brands are starting to recognize and take a hold of and actually invest resources into community management, which hasn't ever been the case in years past, even though it could have really been that way since the beginning. But
and partly too is like I think it like from an outside perspective, like if I knew personally like who did it, like who runs certain accounts, like it just kind of like ruins it for me. Like,
the magic.
It's like the idea of like a lot of like the people that I look up to most on like Twitter, like from a comedy perspective, are just like they're not like comedians who are just like tweeting on stuff. They're normal people who are just like agitated lawyers or like plumbers who just like have these like named accounts that just like aren't real names, and they can say whatever they want and it's unfiltered and it's hilarious, and like I don't want to know. Like I'd love to meet him in real life, hang out with him, but maybe, but like it's
that's the thing with that Drill account, the the kingpin of weird Twitter, and got doxxed.
Even he got doxxed, and like for a while it was just perfect because like, is this like a weird bot? Is this like a person? Like who could think these things?
It could have been a bot. Yeah, it literally, like when you look at those stream of conscience tweets, it seems like something a bot could like create.
It would have been the most brilliant bot. The guy's really funny. I think that fame on social, especially when it's like a brand too, is not. Most people outside of the advertising world just like don't care. Like even just like
people hate brands. Like they do. I mean, it's almost most people that love, like from a pop culture, whatever you want to call it, like outer cultural standpoint, like they like the absurdity of brands, or they like being able to make fun of brands, or like something cool or fun of brand like Super Bowl commercials. People love that, but like just in like a day to day, it's not like brands are occupying your conscious space. It's more of like a subconscious.
It's such like a
type of
weird
thing.
dynamic. It's just the idea that these brands just became like people and just
When
like
did it happen?
one-on-one connections. It's like we don't like engage one-on-one with their audience. And like I love like, you know, certain clothing brands. Like, you know, it's like, you know, I buy tie just because it's good. I don't think about it. Or I like Nike like for Nike. Like if I would get a pair of running shoes, like like I like them. Do I have a one-on-one connection with them? Like no. Like why would I?
Yeah.
I don't really want that. I like it because I like it, and so that's why I follow certain things and respect the work that they do. But it's just
I think that kind of separates though. Like that's an interesting perspective to separate real like in-person culture versus like the online culture, because when your focus like when most of your life's focus is in your like in-person relationships and like how you're living day to day,
Right.
you live a certain way where you obviously are feeling connected. Like if that's the space that you're living in, there's a connectivity there naturally from your environment of family, friends, coworkers, whatever. But a lot of what I think you would agree, like a lot of especially what makes up the Twitter, Reddit style online culture communities is people who are more either isolated or craving connection, or like they're sort of it's not like a total generalization. It's not everybody, but
Yeah.
it seems like the majority of the active ones, like the ones who would reach out to like MoonPie and like ask you for life advice and stuff. There's this craving of connection and relationship where you get the sense that they're lacking that somewhere. So they look for this anonymous
100%.
brand as their guiding light.
I think it's so ironic too. Is just like brands like connect us either way, like because Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, like they're all free because of brands. Like they're paying to be on there, and like there wouldn't be a Facebook if there wasn't ads.
Just making billions of dollars from companies
so
investing
like, it's just,
in ads.
You have to like take social media and brands like hand in hand, or you don't get social media.
Yeah.
Like you get some weird, like, what's that one? There's been a couple like failed startup ones, like there's like Peach and there was something else.
Vero was the recent one. It was like an Instagram competitor.
Mammoth. Yeah, like one of those things where just like there's no brands ever. And it's like that's our stand. And like, well, you get like no followers. That like no one's gonna come to your thing just because. Which is so weird. But yeah, like you said, like there's definitely genuine people who are like reaching out to brands, and we've had that on MoonPie. Like at its core, I remember like tweeting out one tweet a long time ago that was. It was just like in the moment, it was just like something. If you're having a bad day, like let's talk about it. Yeah. And people talked about it. I was flooded with DMs of like real situations, and it was kind of like this weird. I don't want to call it like a confessional, but it kind of felt like one. It was like you're behind this like mask or behind this like wall, and people could say whatever they wanted, and like. I wasn't gonna judge them or anything. It wasn't like a therapist or something. It felt like it. It was like people coming to you with problems, and like I couldn't do anything about it. Like I'm gonna send them a MoonPie, but like like there was some like really crazy stuff that went down in DMs. Like not that crazy, but
on that like interpersonal level, which I think that ties into just at the level of how important it is for brands to hire well-intentioned, self-aware, good, genuine, whatever brand word you want to use,
people.
authentic, good people like to do these types of jobs, because if you're on social media and you are in those situations, like if you're not actually meaning the things you're saying, you get sniffed out instantly. Like people sniff out inauthenticity. Just like that. And that's why people don't like brands on social media, because it feels so unnatural. Like it feels so inauthentic and detached, and why is this brand trying to talk to me or whatever? So if you can sort of break that fourth wall and kind of get into the, yes, I'm representing a brand, but clearly I'm the person behind the brand and I'm talking to you right now. Like there's a cool space to be had, like an actual... You can't call it real relationship on some degree, because it's still a consumer to customer type thing, or business to consumer type of thing. So it's not obviously if you weren't working for MoonPie, you wouldn't be talking to these. You know what I mean? So it's still like there's a job.
Yeah, it's just
there's
true.
a job naturally implied,
True.
but it is a cool, like there's two ways to take that. And there's one, you take it from a pure consumer standpoint, like this is a customer, let's treat it like a customer, or you treat it like a person. So you have to really have somebody like manning the ship who cares. Like you have to care when these people reach out with their problems.
It gets distilled, man. It just goes down to like, what does our audience care about? Like, what do consumers?
Yeah.
But like, if you just like change it out for like people, it just kind of changes the equation just a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think
it's just
that's
people.
key. Like, they just want to be heard and listened to. Like, that's why a lot of people like reach out, because they know that, either a MoonPie or Wendy's or Chili's is gonna come in and like say something.
Yeah, it like makes their day in a lot of cases.
Yeah,
like
just
when your
like-
brand replies to them, they want to screenshot it, they'll tweet it, they'll retweet it. Like, look at this! It's like it's the coolest thing for some people.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah. So, like, are there any like looking outward, I guess, from like where you're sitting? Are there any brands right now that you feel are doing an exceptional job at anything on social that you're looking at? Like, that is what more brands should be doing.
Yeah, I respect a lot of different. I have this really weird respect for. And I think I've shouted it out before, maybe, but it's the Northeast Regional Sewer Company of like Ohio. It's like Northeast Regional Sewer of Ohio, and it's
is it
like,
a verified account?
It's a verified account,
Okay.
and it's just like Northeast Ohio's like sewer company, and obviously they have one job to do. Well, obviously multiple for the sewer thing, but like what, like how do you like own that? Like how do you own that space? And like, so sometimes it just like they resort to like poop jokes, but the person behind it is like very clever. Like huge props to that, because like looking at it perspective is like, who would want to do that?
Yeah.
But they're making the most of what they have, and they're very like true and authentic, and they have like the credibility and the right to talk about what they're talking about. And it just all adds up to me. Like, they're not like some crazy, like they don't have an insane following by any means, but there's like this respect that like they should.
Yeah. They're not trying to be something they're not. They're
but at the same time, it's like, if they had, 1 million followers, it wouldn't be like as genuine, because like not a million, I mean, I guess more than 1 million people are affected by Northeast Ohio's like sewer company, but it's
just not something you generally would follow on Twitter.
Right.
Like, what would you, when you think about like who are your follows on social media? It really is, when a brand fits into that picture, it is kind of bizarre. It's like you care enough to see what this brand has to say on a regular basis.
Yeah, or just like I like little moments too, because I think like for me, like I've followed like as many brands as I'm gonna follow, maybe until like something really crazy happens. But like I think like brands that can like win moments, like especially like you saw like Kanye West tweet something about like, maybe it was Kanye, something tweeted about like Excel or something, like Microsoft Excel, and then like they like jumped in the conversation like very last minute, and it was just so funny. I'm just like, that's like where you can like find your niche, is just like always constantly like looking where you are.
That's so true.
I think it's like moments as opposed to like this brand always has a consistent thing, because like that's so hard to do. Like I like as much as like advice I like to give out, it's like MoonPie was this like funny outlier. So
it's tough, because that's so true. Like at any given moment, like I've started to do with some of our accounts, like actually like created a Twitter account just to only follow like mass like news producers and influencers like Chrissy Teigen, like who are the people that are like posting highly engaging, funny, thoughtful,
100%,
whatever. So then you have like a custom like separate feed to sort of like sift throughout the day to see where you could fit into that, because it's true, like depending on what you're selling or what you're doing, you could fit into any like some moment could happen, like Kanye could tweet out something about toast. And if you're a toaster company or something, then you could have like your moment to just jump into that status and go viral.
It's like super smart. Yeah. Just like the reply section of just having that. Those magnets of culture. And then obviously it's like you don't fit into every conversation.
Yeah, you can't fit into all of them.
Yeah, it's just don't have the credibility to. It's just like,
And there's no easy way to search for that. I mean, like even there's programs you can use like Crimson Hexagon. You can use like the Twitter, what do you call it? Like the keyword searches and all that. You can do all this stuff, but in real time, it's so hard to catch these waves when they're coming in. So you like really have to you almost have to have a separate feed or like a way if you're looking for a big break. Like you need to have some way to navigate the constant river that is flowing of tweets and social, and not just tweets, but moments, like you're saying, like an event, whether it's a tragedy. Like I had a moment. This was so bad with Steakum a few months ago. I guess it was in September, October. There were it was like an allegation, I think came out with James Franco. It was like a sexual harassment type allegation. I had a meme planned of James Franco from Pineapple Express that I was going to post on our Twitter that day. And I'm not kidding. My coworker walked past my desk, saw that I was getting ready to post it, and I was like, "Oh, like spicy, dude. Like, are you like, what are you doing?" Like looking over, I'm just like, "Oh, like I kind of laughed, like I just did now," but I was like, "Oh, like what?" Like I didn't know.
Yeah.
I literally hadn't read it, and he told me, he's like, "Yeah, this like just broke," and I was like, "Thank God that I didn't post that," because like you really have to stay. Anything a tragedy could happen. You don't want to talk about, like the Flint water crisis. Don't joke about that. Like there's certain things that come up. You have to know what to jump on and what to avoid.
It's so funny. You look at these big agencies that say like, we're social, we're digital first. Like we're talking like whether they're like senior leadership or not. Like if you haven't like had that moment of like where you posted something wrong or like scheduled something, like if you weren't like in it, like you're not like social first. Like I'm sorry, it's just there's like this realness moment of us like I know exactly what you felt right then, but like
so
if you had
petrifying.
like told it to like some like upper crust leader, that'd be like, yeah, why'd you do that? Like, why would you not like look it up? I'm like, no, you're just like
you don't get it.
No, you can't look at everything. But yeah, like to your point, like if you just have that, that's a great idea. Like the list of just because someone could just say like, hey, like I'm a vegetarian now, and Steakum could be like, oh, like
exactly.
That's all.
Yeah.
Like
that's all you need.
You wouldn't catch that. Like, otherwise, if you just like search Steakum all day,
because you can't be searching that stuff all day. Like, and stuff's always gonna be popping up, and it's tough. I mean, it's just tough in general to keep up with it. But so like we're in 2018, and things are already crazy. Brands are people. MoonPie is a person. Steakum's a person. All these brands are trying to be people, and like, it's a weird. Advertising is changing dramatically in that way, where everybody's kind of. Some call it late stage capitalism. We're in this like weird phase of like social media marketing that is kind of like coming to a head in like all these really bizarre ways. Like, what do you see kind of coming next for social media marketing? Is there anything coming up that you're looking ahead at, or any predictions? Like, what's the next big thing?
That's a great question. I honestly don't know.
Me neither. That's why I'm asking you.
It's
You're the professional.
It's funny. I can look at projections. I do think that there's like definitely like a younger, cooler audience coming up, and I think they're savvy, and I think it's like I think a lot of stuff gets like misconstrued of the idea that these newer audiences are just like they have no attention span. It's like I look at this for like 5 seconds, and if I don't see the brain message, then it's just like it's worthless to me. But I don't think that's the case. I think that like most of these people, or millennials or Gen Z or whatever you want, they just have like a really short tolerance for like bad content.
Yeah, for BS.
That's
what it is. They see through it. They grew up with it.
They can see right through it. Like I can make you watch like a 4 or 5 minute like video if it's like really cool. Like, and I think that most people don't invest in like that kind of factor because at the same time, yes, it's expensive, but also advertising is like an investment. Like
it always
over
has
time.
Been. Yeah.
And so I think people who can think they can just put their message on a post and spend a lot of money and throw it out there is going to have the same impact as say I'm going to launch this crazy ridiculous video and then drop it. Putting a lot of effort to it is a totally different story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, because it really is. You see just this kind of widening disconnect between what seems to be if it's split into two generalized teams. It's like you have the market, like the older generation of marketing, advertising, business experts, and then these emerging younger generations that are coming up, and they grew up with the internet. So they grew up in this just immersed in mass media. You know, like they grew up watching YouTube ads from the time they were 5, playing on iPads from the time they were 5. You know what I mean? Like these are kids that get the language, like you said. Like they might have a shorter attention span, but I think that naturally does come from this sort of you have to click through stuff,
Right.
and you have to pay extra to avoid ads. Like you're like everything is fast paced now, and that I think it's easy for marketers to sort of discredit in a lot of ways their buying patterns, because like there's all those, you know, like millennials are killing industries, millennials are killing everything. Like there's this sort
killed
of
so many things.
we kill everything. It's just
I hate everything.
Yeah, we're just the worst apparently. But yeah, I think there's just a disconnect there, because there's a clearly, like, there's some industries, there's some things that need to die. There's change, there's natural growth and changing happening. So things are dying, things are like, you know, growing and coming into their own. And yeah, I think when it comes to like social media marketing specifically, it really is like you know, it's just a matter of staying aware, I guess, and keen to these younger audiences and knowing and adapting.
Again, I think it goes back to what we were talking about, like this emotional brand like self-aware. Like it's not just like what we're doing. It's like, what is everyone else doing? Like,
yeah.
I'm on this, like, you know, I'm on a highway and there's other drivers. Like I got to make sure they're like, you know, make sure they're doing the right thing too. So
yeah, absolutely, man. Dude, this has been awesome. Thanks so much again for doing this. Like, do you want to share at all, like, what you're doing right now, like what you got going on?
Yeah, I've kind of since I'm in New York City right now. Well, I'm in Souderton, Pennsylvania, right now.
You're in my town
in this
right
basement.
now.
Yeah, I live in New York City. I work at an agency called Laundry Service, and I'm strictly kind of a copywriter, so creatives right now. So it's kind of like what I wanted to do, and kind of like moving out and getting into this, you know, larger ad world, and kind of seeing, you know, working with kind of the best in the business to, you know, own craft and, you know, get a full idea of the creative spectrum. I think is really important, because it's not so siloed anymore, where you can say like, oh, I have, you know, really old creative directors and they're doing TV, and I have really young dudes and they're just doing social. Like it's all kind of like, yeah, I think the people who have it figured out is all kind of one big thing. And I think that especially now that people are like, even like millennials now, like they're like seniors in their like fields now. They're like all lawyers and doctors. Like so they're weird. Like 40 years old. So it's
millennial. Like what is it? It's like the oldest. Well, I don't know what the technicality of it is, but I think the oldest like term like for millennials are like 36 or 37 right now. I think, right?
Yeah.
Like we're the younger ones, because we're 26. Like, are you 26?
26.
Yeah. So we're like lower end of that. So
yeah, and it's weird too. Is just like babies are born every day. So it's like, what is the cutoff of the generations? Like, you know what I mean?
So arbitrary.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Like, sorry, baby, you just missed the line by 3 seconds.
Yeah, I guess there's like a generation of like the baby boomers who are just like.
It was clear.
It was clear where they all came from.
It
was like a wave.
Yeah.
But then there were other people being born at different. I just wasn't as much. So I guess I don't.
The lingo is confusing.
This is just my own personal vendetta, generational.
It's all just tribalism. The old pitting up against the new, the young trying to eat the old.
Eat the rich, yeah.
Eat the rich.
Eat the old. Just eat everything that we don't like.
That's the name of the game. That's what we do. All right, man. Well, thanks so much for the time. Is there anywhere like people can find you, or any info you want to put out there?
Yes. My Twitter is just at @pwells, first initial, last name, and then my Instagram is Patrick at the Disco. It's Patrick like dot at the disco. Yeah. So it was. I don't like them. They're a good band, like objectively, but I don't like them as much as I used to. But
it's a great play on words. And you're a copywriter now, so that's what you have to do.
That's literally all I say is just puns. And they're like, this guy gets it. He's a copywriter.
That's exactly how they see it too. It's like alliterations, puns, rhymes.
You literally just go on to like dictionary.com and look up like idioms all day and just be like, where does like pizza fit in? Where does this fit in? And you're a pro. That's it. Yeah, it's more than that, definitely, guys. It's a lot of hard
so
work.
Much
it's
more.
intensive.
So much more.
Yeah, it's, you know.
Shoot for the stars. Maybe you'll land on the moon pie.
Or in a black hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those two.
Steak 'em blessed, dude. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's been real.